So Uta here with my first yarrow, which is in bloom. I got this red yarrow last year. It usually spreads out and sends up all these kind of stems, has these feathery uh, leaves, and it bushes out, and the flower provides a wonderful platform for the bees and the butterflies to do their nectaring and whatever it is that the bees get, the pollen and the nectar, I think. Um, yeah, so I decided I would pick this for myself and to show you. It does have a really increasing kind of habit. The seeds usually do spread and germinate. I've put this in the Lorraine garden, which I started in memory of my mother at our local Maine post office, and in a cemetery I started Richard's Bend in memory of my father, and these are I divided my last year's planting and put them in each of those satellite gardens of mine. So, some of you have written in saying, I wish I could have a place to garden, and I just suggest to look for some kind of forsaken corner or planter or someplace and ask if you might put in some simple things. And if it's not too big, all you'd have to do is carry a little bottle of water for it when it doesn't rain. Today we've had very nice soft rain, and now I think it's stopped. And I'm very happy about that because in a couple of days I'm on a little vacation with our um, friend and sister channel producer, um, Mashanta Shatan. She's listed in the information on my channel, and I've interviewed on her channel maybe a half a dozen times, and we've always been very close as soon as she got in touch with me, and so we're going on a little adventure, and we're going to end up here again for a few days. Oh my goodness, there's out of the window I'm seeing a great spangled fritillary, maybe even two. That will be number 22 and 23. So this is an update on Viola. If you go to the playlist called Trans Widow Testimonies, Viola Part 1 is there. And she had the experience of on their daughter's first birthday, suddenly the father of the daughter is borrowing, without permission, of course, borrowing Viola's skirt and prancing around and saying, "This is who I am now." So, talk about using someone else's time, using a celebration of someone else, like a 1 year old, to get all this attention. It's just it's so nice for me to have the distraction of the butterflies. It's just circling around in my meadow bed. And probably then it's going over to the flowers that are fenced in. So that's very nice. I was wondering if they'd come back after the rain. All right. So the other thing that's happened is that in an outing group, kind of like scouts, Viola's sons who are older and whose father isn't around, they participate in this kind of scouting group. She lives in a location where they can go to the beach, and there happens to be a very ideological, uh, insistent, activist lesbian couple. I call them lesbians. One of the women in that couple thinks that she's a man, and she's got the scars and everything. So when she gets dressed to go into the water, of course, she takes off the shirt, and the children participating get to see these massive scars. So what's been going on is Viola continues to only allow this guy, whom we're calling Gavin, uh, supervised visitation. He never really lived with them, and after this daughter's first birthday, he went off to live in the dorm and enter a college program. And he's 31, so uh, some kind of a late bloomer. Apparently got very influenced by the cross-sex ideology on campus, and it's a pretty blue westerly sort of location in the U.S. And so he stalked her, followed her, and stuff after an appearance at this outdoor activities group, and um, and now this lesbian couple is harassing her and in front of the children, accusing her of being a bigot. It sounds like there are maybe, 10 kids or so participating in this. And so this guy is doing that. Gavin is just showing up where he thinks she might be with the kids, and he just shows up. And I have relayed how my ex Nettie did that. He would suddenly show up in the apartment that we were staying in after he moved out. He would show up when he knew we would be leaving to take my older son to school. And so I started leaving early and just playing on the playground, or I would even go over to a friend's house and offer to bring them a picnic breakfast or something just to not be home. And that had to be a complaint that I made in court. Now, fortunately, Viola was never married to Gavin, so they don't have to go through the divorce. And there is no question that she will get full custody and that he will just have like once a week supervised visitation with the daughter. Um, and she's still nursing. So the other piece of this is that the little daughter is just starting to talk, and Gavin corrects her and has some other name similar to Nettie, actually, um, that he decided he wants to be called instead of Daddy. And so one of the things she agreed to do as his visitation time is to go to the zoo with all three kids. And she had the privilege of being present when he ducked into the ladies' room to use the bathroom. Fully intact male. He is probably on hormones already. That was a part of it. That, like, he got on hormones within 2 months, and he continues to have therapy in quotes with uh, a man who ideates a female persona. So there's a huge conflict of interest with those therapists who are men trying to justify what they did by preaching it to other people. And I know that my younger son went for therapy to someone like that. And what I got back from my son was suddenly he's talking completely differently. He wrote me a letter. I call it the 3-page letter of anger, which I buried out in the woods. After reading it once, and it burned, every word kind of burned into my brain just on the first reading. But he said, "You cried so much that it made me feel guilty." And nothing could be further from the truth. I'm pretty sure I did answer him and say, "Mrs. Fells, your kindergarten teacher, came out in tears at the dismissal from your first year of kindergarten in the fall, saying that you had cried all afternoon during the playtime and you were inconsolable." And she was very, very upset by this. She was an experienced kindergarten teacher, had never had a child experience or exhibit, such distress and be so forlorn even during playtime. So my son says that he doesn't remember his early childhood. And I can understand why, because I had to jump out and do substitute teaching and take him to Rose, the person my neighbor, that I dedicated my book In the Curated Woods, True Tales of a Grass Widow. That book is dedicated to Rose Schneider. And then two of my other friends, Emily and Allison, they took care of my younger son while I jumped out after getting my older son to school. And then I was a substitute assistant teacher for a few months just so I could update my resume and get some contacts. And then at one of the schools where I worked as a substitute, I got a part time job. And that's the time period when I worked three jobs. So there are a couple more stories. I'm wondering, yes, yeah. So the thing is, there's just no negotiating with these guys. Like, uh, if you say you're not allowed to say, look, I'm not going to be with you if you go into the women's bathroom. I'm not going to do this. I suggested to Viola that it's most likely that she needs to figure out a different way to do this, where I think she's living with her parents, where her parents are home and they have it all set up with some toys or something, and this guy gets a couple of hours with the daughter. It's just, oh, and there's a woodchuck. I have to go chase the woodchuck in a minute. Okay, so I think some kind of alternative for the visitation of this Gavin with his daughter, it really needs to happen because I think it's too much for her. She said it was upsetting for her to watch him go into the ladies' room and to, I found that really, really hard. It was suggested to me that we should be having family dinner together with our two children in a restaurant. Um, and once a month after the separation. And I could see that if you had a different kind of a divorce, but I felt that Nettie would just collect information. Um, and I also felt, and use the information very negatively. I also felt that um, the children would then feel that they have to call me by my first name instead of mom because Nettie was so insistent that they don't call him dad. And he put forth this idea that our children should just call us by our first names, both of us. And, oh, good, the woodchuck left. It's not chomping on my meadow. That's interesting. I wonder why it left. The wildlife update at the curated woods. Yeah, so I absolutely do not recommend that you do any kind of socializing um, with your former spouse who now is ideating that he's an opposite sex because you will you will be either um, tyrannized and dominated, and this person will try to make sure that everybody recognizes him at your expense. It was like that at the first birthday party, our younger son's sixth birthday party. We tried to do it together at a bowling alley, and I had to pay for half of it, and I decided to bring a cake, even though part of the deal was an ice cream cake. And and there were a lot of people who were just totally confused about who I was. They thought I was the babysitter, which I suppose they could have. That was a little bit flattering, I suppose, because maybe they thought I looked younger than I did. I certainly was thin. because first of all, I was trying to save money, so when my children weren't there, I ate peanut butter on toast and called it dinner. Interestingly, the cardiologists now say, "Oh, that's great. That's really good for your heart." So I got through. I learned all the, all of these frugalities. We made lentil soup, pea soup. Uh, I don't, I don't regret having to tighten my belt and live frugally, but um, I wish, for example, that I had known about the aspects of chiropractic acupressure. Um, and I wish that I could have done some stress reduction through that because I really was, back in the 1990s, I was not informed about what PTSD is. My PTSD did not get diagnosed until 2012, literally. And so I thought I might have a heart condition or something. I thought I might be really ill, and I didn't pursue it because I was actually literally afraid that if Nettie found out that I have some kind of a heart condition or any kind of abnormality physically, that he would try to sue for custody on the basis that I don't have the physical capacity, which is to take care of our kids, which is really odd because when he was, going through this, this was before I figured out that he was on estrogen. We had made a trip to the Botanic Garden, might have been the year before even. We had taken a trip to the Botanic Garden in Brooklyn during the cherry blossom time, and we brought a blanket and we brought a little lunch. And he sat there like a stone. Our little children were running around. They were um, trying to get him to play with them. And he just sat there and stared into space. And I said, listen, you got to snap yourself out of this. We're with our children. Do you want to just go home? If you take some of the things that will be heavy for me, you could just go home. And then I started playing with the children. He wouldn't answer me. This is sort of another method of ritual conditioning and manipulation. They give you the silent treatment. That happened with the trans widow who's most recently contacted me, whose story I'm going to start putting together. We have to decide on her name. He gave her the silent treatment so frequently. And for children to see that, like the way my son saw it, there's this unspoken tension and fear and anxiety. It's just so wrong. And this is what I object to with these um, therapists and psychologists or anyone who's calling themselves an expert in cross-sex ideation. They're really not learning how it falls out on the family, and they are expecting um, the wives and the children and the siblings and the parents and anyone else to make up for the holes that he is creating in the fabric of the family unit. This is just, it is not studied. Now, I want to really collect data. And how long did you know him before you moved in together? Were there any signs at the beginning? Was it a slow erosion of your boundaries, like borrowing your clothes? That's another one that's going to come up. This guy started borrowing her clothes. He started buying things like women's bicycling pants, which are essentially almost the same as men's, um, and and just slowly seeing how far he can go. I mean, he's out now. He's out of the house, and he's got somebody just like himself that he's, I guess, living with, and But let's see, some of the other questions are, was it a revelation? Or in that case that I just referred to, that was a slow drip, drip, drip of revelation. And, or was it a discovery, this shocking thing like me finding these three diaries? I think it's really important um, that we start keeping some data. And I'm going to go through all of the trans widows' testimonies. And I want to come up with about a dozen questions that that we can answer, because I am kind of expecting that in a few months there will be probably more than 50 of us. And if I can get answers to 12 or 14 questions and get some data, another very important question, was he a profligate spender? Did he overspend and accrue debt? This is very common. I would say that it's more than half. Also, was he ever violent towards you? There's at least three among our cohort so far whose husbands choked them and the police had to be called. My husband, Nettie, threw things. He never choked me or uh, did, uh, directly um, physical assault of me. Also, did he accuse you of physical assault? Did he accuse you of defamation when you're simply telling exactly and factually what happened? The way in which these guys present what's going on in their family, in their therapy sessions, is so disingenuous. They make themselves into the victims and they claim to their therapists that they are being verbally and physically abused. They make stuff up about us. So I have to go out and count butterflies.